Your mama took something from us. You got 30 seconds to give it back.
The church basement smelled of fried chicken and pine saw when they opened the casket. People whispered prayers, but Nyla kept staring at her mother's face, powdered soft like a porcelain doll. Then she noticed something odd, a Social Security card tucked inside the satin lining. The name wasn't her mother's. Quick heads up before we jump in. If you're into real stories, strange disappearances, and the kind of truths people try to bury, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell so you don't miss what comes next. All right, let's get into it. When Nyla Carter buries her mother in Memphis, she expects grief, not questions. But hidden inside her mother's belongings are multiple IDs, birth certificates under different names, and an old newspaper clipping about a Chicago double homicide from 1987. The prime suspect? A woman with her mother's eyes. As Nyla searches for answers, she discovers that her mother lived an entirely different life, a life on the run, a life soaked in secrets. Her quest for truth pulls her into a dangerous web of old loyalties, buried crimes, and people who will kill to keep the past hidden. This is a 12-part psychological crime drama, told with raw tension, moral complexity, and twists that hit like a gut punch. The church was hot that morning, hotter than the August sun outside. Nyla Carter shifted in her pew, tugging at the hem of her black dress as Sister Betty leaned over to whisper condolences she didn't mean. The fans waved in slow, synchronized misery, humming against the stale air, but nothing could drown out the sound of grief in her chest, a dull thud, heavy and hollow. Mama deserved better than this, Nyla thought, as the pastor droned on about eternal rest and humble lives. Humble, if only they knew. When the service ended, the family lined up for their last goodbye. Nyla moved toward the open casket, her heels clicking soft against the worn carpet. Her mother, Lillian Carter, or so she thought, looked peaceful. Too peaceful. Nyla's fingers lingered on the edge of the coffin as something caught her eye. Tucked inside the satin pillow, almost hidden, was a card. She reached for it, her heart thudding. It wasn't a prayer card. It was a Social Security card. And the name on it wasn't Lillian Carter. It said Marjorie Ellis. Nyla froze, glancing around the church like someone might snatch the secret from her hands. Who the hell was Marjorie Ellis? Her Aunt Dolores shuffled close, pressing a damp tissue to her nose. "Baby, you ready? We gon' head to the repast." Nyla nodded too fast, slipping the card into her clutch. The satin lid came down with a whisper of air, sealing her mother inside like a lie wrapped in silk. Outside, the Memphis heat hit her like a slap. But the chill crawling up her spine? That came from somewhere else entirely. Because if Mama wasn't Mama, then who was she? And why did it feel like somebody didn't want her to find out? The repast stretched long into the evening, the air thick with gossip and gospel hymns, but Nyla barely tasted the food on her plate. Voices floated past her like ghosts. Your mama was a saint. Never hurt nobody. Always kept her business quiet. That last one hit like a nail in her chest. Quiet business. She excused herself early, claiming a headache, and drove home with the radio low, her fingers tapping the steering wheel like a nervous tell. The Social Security card sat in her clutch like a loaded gun. Marjorie Ellis. She whispered the name under her breath, testing how it tasted in her mouth. It didn't belong to Mama. It couldn't. Her apartment was dark when she entered. She didn't turn on the lights. Instead, she went straight to her bedroom, pulling the card from her purse and laying it flat on the nightstand. The letters stared back at her like eyes in the dark. "All right, Mama," she murmured. "What else you been hiding?" The funeral home still hadn't delivered Mama's things, just a small velvet pouch of jewelry and her purse, now sitting at the foot of Nyla's bed. She emptied it slowly, lipstick worn down to a nub, a compact mirror, a folded grocery list, and keys. 2 sets, one for the house she grew up in, and another unfamiliar, small and brass, with the number 1023 etched in the head. A lockbox key? A safety deposit box? Her pulse quickened. She opened Mama's old overnight bag next, digging through until her fingers scraped something hard. A shoebox, sealed with brittle masking tape, tucked under a layer of sweaters. She hauled it onto the bed, her breath shallow. The tape split with a snap. Inside, 3 birth certificates. 3 different names. A faded Polaroid of Mama, or whoever she was leaning against a burgundy Cadillac, grinning wide. And an envelope of yellowed newspaper clippings, their edges curling like secrets too long in the dark. Nyla unfolded the top clipping. Double homicide stuns South Side. 2 men found dead in a South Chicago apartment. Police seek woman, age 27, identified as... Nyla's eyes froze on the name. Marjorie Ellis. Her stomach nodded. The date on the paper read August 14th, 1987, the year before Nyla was born. The sound hit her, then a soft creak, like weight on a floorboard. She whipped around, heart slamming. Silence. Just the hum of her refrigerator in the next room. Still, she checked the locks twice before going back to the bed. The clippings rustled in her trembling hands as another thought rooted in her mind like rot. If Mama was Marjorie Ellis, and Marjorie Ellis was wanted for murder, then who had Nyla been living with all her life? And why did Mama never tell her who she really was running from? Nyla stuffed the box back under the bed, but the question didn't stay buried. It crawled under her skin and wouldn't let go. Outside her window, the streetlights flickered once, and somewhere in the dark, a car engine idled too long before pulling away. Morning crawled in slow, gray, and heavy. Nyla hadn't slept, couldn't. The box under her bed felt radioactive, humming secrets through the mattress into her bones. At dawn, she gave up on pretending brewed coffee that tasted like mud and stared at the Polaroid until her eyes burned. Mama Lillian, Marjorie, whoever the hell she was, looked different in that picture. Wild, even. The curls spilling down her back, the tight jeans, the bold smile like a woman who owned the street and dared you to say otherwise. That wasn't the church mother with soft hands and quiet hymns. That was somebody else. On the back of the photo, in faded blue ink, was a note. Me and G at the spot, 87. G. Who was G? Nyla slipped the photo into her tote and drove to South Memphis, to the house she grew up in, the one, now sitting silent and hollow since the funeral. The screen door squeaked like a warning as she stepped inside. The air smelled stale, tinged with pine saw and old grief. She closed the door behind her and locked it, listening to the deadbolt click like a promise. Her Aunt Dolores had already cleaned most of Mama's things, but Nyla knew the woman's habits. If Mama had secrets, they were buried where nobody would think to look. The bedroom was neat as a prayer meeting, but Nyla dropped to her knees and slid open the drawer under the bed frame. Nothing but an old Bible and a shoebox of recipes. She flipped through them, heart stuttering when an envelope fell out. Inside, a faded photo strip, 3 shots of Mama with a man. Broad shoulders, a gold tooth flashing in every grin, his arm heavy around her waist. His face had a name in blue pen beneath it, Gideon. Nyla whispered it aloud like it might wake the dead. Gideon. The back of the strip had an address scrawled in the same hand. The spot, 43rd and Wentworth. Chicago. Her stomach dropped. That clipping, the double homicide, had been South Chicago. She sank on the edge of the bed, clutching the photo strip, her pulse banging against her ribs. Every new answer cracked open 10 more questions. Why was Mama tied to 2 dead men? Who was Gideon? And why did it feel like somebody still cared enough to keep an eye on her? Because that sound began to creak on the porch. Nyla froze, listening. Slow steps across the wooden boards. A shadow slipping past the thin curtains. A black sedan sat parked across the street. Engine off this time. The driver's face was hidden, a silhouette behind tinted glass. But Nyla could feel it, that weight, heavy and sharp as a blade watching her. She let the curtain fall and stepped back, every nerve screaming. Whatever Mama ran from all those years ago, it wasn't finished yet. The black sedan was gone by the time Nyla stepped out onto the porch. The street was empty, save for an old man walking his dog and the distant hum of a lawnmower. But that didn't settle the crawling under her skin. Whoever was in that car wasn't a neighbor. They were watching, waiting. She locked up the house and drove straight to Aunt Dolores's, her grip on the steering wheel tight as a vice. Dolores lived on the other side of town, in a squat brick house that smelled of collard greens and bleach. "I need answers," Nyla shot back. Dolores frowned, her church hat still perched on her head, though the service had ended yesterday. Answers about what? Nyla slid the Polaroid across the table. The one of Mama with the Cadillac. "Who's G?" Dolores froze like someone pressed pause. Her fingers tightened around her mug. "Where'd you find that?" "In her things," Nyla said. "And don't tell me it's nothing. I've got a box of names and papers that don't belong to Mama. Lillian Carter wasn't her real name." Dolores set the mug down with a clink. For a long moment, all Nyla heard was the tick of the kitchen clock and the distant rumble of a freight train rolling through Memphis. Finally, Dolores sighed. "Lord, Lil..." She pinched the bridge of her nose. Gideon Johnson. That was a lifetime ago. Who was he to her? A man she shouldn't have loved, Dolores said softly. A man that got her into trouble deep enough she had to run. Nyla's pulse quickened. What kind of trouble? Dolores's eyes flicked to the window like someone might be listening. The kind that don't stay buried. "Baby, if you're smart, you'll burn whatever you found and leave it in the past." That's not an answer. Dolores leaned forward, voice sharp now. "It's the only one you're getting." The front door creaked open before Nyla could reply. Heavy boots on linoleum. A man's voice calling out, "Dolores?" Dolores shot up, her face tight. "In here." The man who stepped in looked about mid-50s, his frame solid like an old oak, his skin dark and weathered. He wore a gray suit that had seen better Sundays and carried himself like somebody who'd spent years giving orders nobody questioned. His eyes landed on Nyla, and in that instant her stomach knotted. Because the look he gave her wasn't polite. It wasn't curious. It was knowing. Dolores cleared her throat. "Nyla, this here is Reverend Amos, old family friend." Reverend Amos nodded slow, those eyes never leaving hers. "Lillian's girl," he said, voice low, almost like a prayer. "Looks just like her." Nyla managed a tight smile, but her skin prickled. Something about the way he said it, like he wasn't talking about church or condolences. Dolores fussed with the mugs, pretending not to notice the tension. "You here for the meeting?" Amos pulled out a chair and sat down across from Nyla, folding his hands on the table. "Not exactly," he said. "Just thought I'd come pay my respects and make sure the family's doing all right." His eyes dropped to the tote by her feet, the one with the Polaroid peeking out. And Nyla felt it. Clear as thunder before a storm, this man knew more than Dolores. Maybe more than Mama ever wanted anyone to know. Nyla sat rigid in her chair, her hands locked around her mug, though the coffee had gone cold. Reverend Amos wasn't like any churchman she'd met. His voice was warm, his smile easy, but his eyes, they had weight. Heavy and sharp, like something forged in a fire she couldn't see. He reached across the table, slow and deliberate, lifting the Polaroid with two thick fingers. "This yours?" Nyla's pulse skipped. "It was in my mama's things." He turned the picture over, reading the ink. Me and G at the spot. A chuckle, low and bitter. Lord, ain't that a memory? Dolores shot him a look that was part warning, part plea. Amos. He waved her off, still studying Nyla. Your mama. She had spirit. Fire like you wouldn't believe. But fire'll burn a house down if you don't keep it in check. He leaned in closer. That's what happened to her. Burned everything. Nyla swallowed hard. What are you saying? I'm saying the past don't stay dead just 'cause you put it in a box. His tone softened, but it carried something darker underneath. Best thing you can do, baby girl, is let it lie. Close that box. Leave it shut. Nyla felt her chest tighten. And if I don't? The smile vanished. For a split second, his face looked carved from stone. Then you might find out things you can't unlearn. Things that'll put you in the ground right next to Lillian. The kitchen went silent, the only sound the hum of the old fridge. Dolores slammed her palm on the table, breaking the tension. That's enough, Amos. You came to pay respects, not scare my niece. But he didn't move. His eyes stayed on Nyla, like he was trying to pin her to the chair. Girl, he said softly, there are folks still breathin' who got long memories and long arms. You start diggin', they'll come diggin' for you. He stood then, smoothing his suit jacket like nothing happened. I'll keep y'all in prayer. And just like that, he was gone. The door shut behind him with a whisper that felt more like a slam. Nyla sat frozen, her heart pounding so loud, drowned out Dolores calling her name. She wanted to leave, to get out of that kitchen, but her legs felt heavy, her throat thick, because that wasn't just a warning. That was a threat. She drove home with the windows down, the air thick with Memphis heat. The box under her bed weighted like a live wire. She dumped it out on the floor again, hands shaking, scanning every clipping, every birth certificate like the answers might crawl out and bite her. One document stopped her cold. A marriage license, issued in Cook County, Illinois. Gideon Johnson married to Marjorie Ellis. Her mother wasn't just tied to Gideon. She'd been his wife. Before Nyla could process it, her phone buzzed on the floor. An unknown number flashing across the screen. She hesitated, then answered. A man's voice, deep and rough as gravel. You need to quit digging, Nyla. Your mama ain't the only one who can end up dead. The line went dead. And Nyla's apartment, suddenly, felt like a cage with the walls closing in. Nyla stared at the phone like it might explode. The call had lasted 13 seconds, but the words clung to her like smoke. Quit digging, Nyla. Your mama ain't the only one who can end up dead. Her fingers trembled as she dialed back. No ring, no voicemail, just a flat robotic voice. This number is not in service. Burner phone. She dropped the cell on the couch and pressed her palms to her face, trying to breathe through the rising panic. Who the hell had her number? She'd barely spoken to anyone outside family since Mama passed. The car, the one outside Mama's house. Her chest tightened. Somebody had been following her, watching her dig. She grabbed the Polaroid, again the one with Mama, leaning against the burgundy Cadillac. Gideon. She whispered the name like a curse. He was the only thread tying this all together. Him and the clipping from Chicago. Nyla yanked her laptop from under the coffee table and typed his name into the search bar. Gideon Johnson, Chicago, 1987 double homicide. Articles popped up, mostly old digitized papers, a few crime blogs. Words leapt at her, gang ties. Suspected in multiple robberies, vanished after the murders. Vanished, not dead. Not convicted, just gone. She kept scrolling, her pulse racing, until she found a comment thread from a Chicago crime forum. Word is Gideon ain't gone. Moved down south. Keeps low. Preacher's boy runs interference. Preacher. Her breath hitched. Reverend Amos. The walls of her apartment suddenly felt closer, like the air was turning solid. If Amos was running interference for Gideon, then the visit wasn't about condolences. It was a warning shot. She clicked another link, a blurry photo attached to a discussion. It showed a man in a gray suit walking out of a brick building, flanked by two others. The face was shadowed, but something about the posture screamed power, control. Caption: GJ, still breathing. Memphis sighting rumored. Nyla's stomach dropped. The sound came again, soft, deliberate. A tap on glass. Her head whipped toward the window. The blinds hung open just enough to see the streetlights glowing outside. But between the slats, a figure stood at the curb, motionless, watching. Her breath lodged in her throat. Then her phone buzzed on the couch. Another unknown number. With trembling fingers, she answered. A voice, low and cold. You've got 30 minutes to decide. Stop asking questions, or someone comes through that door. Nyla stood frozen, heart pounding so hard, rattled her ribs. She moved fast, then shoving the box, the clippings, the marriage license into her tote, grabbing her keys with shaking hands. She didn't even lock the door. She ran for her car like the night was chasing her. Because maybe it was. The night swallowed her whole as Nyla sped down Elvis Presley Boulevard, the city lights blurring past like fireflies. Every shadow looked like a tail, every set of headlights like the black sedan from Mama's house. Her hands gripped the wheel so tight, her knuckles ached. She didn't have a plan, just distance. Distance from the voice on the phone. Distance from the window where that figure had stood so still. Her phone lay silent now, face down on the passenger seat. She almost wished it would ring again, if only to confirm she wasn't losing her mind. The tote on the floorboard thudded against her foot as she took a hard turn. Papers spilled out, clippings fanning like a guilty deck of cards. And something else, a tiny brass key with 1023 etched in it. She slammed on the brakes and pulled into the shadow of an old gas station. The key, Mama's purse. She'd forgotten all about it in the storm of warnings and threats. What lock did it open? Nyla dug through the tote, pulling out the folded marriage license, the Polaroid, the newspaper clippings. Then, at the bottom, a wrinkled envelope she hadn't noticed before. It was sealed with a strip of yellow tape, brittle with age. She tore it open with shaking fingers. Inside, a receipt from a Payless motel on Highway 61. Date, August 17th, 1987. Room number, 23. Her breath hitched. 1023. The key wasn't for a bank. It was for a room. A room that hadn't been touched in 36 years. She stared out the windshield at the dark stretch of highway. Going there was insane, but staying put felt like suicide. With a trembling exhale, she started the car again and pointed it toward Highway 61. The road was empty this time of night, just her headlights slicing through the black. The Payless motel appeared like a mirage, its flickering neon sign buzzing weakly in the humid air. Vacancy blinked like a heartbeat. The building was tired, peeling paint, sagging roof, doors lined up like crook teeth. Nyla pulled into the far corner and killed the engine, her pulse loud in her ears. Room 23 was at the end, its number hanging crooked on a rusted nail. She walked slow, her shoes crunching gravel, the tote heavy on her shoulder. Every instinct screamed, turn back. But she slid the key into the lock anyway. The door groaned open, exhaling a stale smell of mildew and cigarettes. She flicked on the light. The room was frozen, like time had stopped in 1987. The same floral bedspread, the same yellowed curtains. Dust coated everything in a gray film. And in the center of the bed sat a metal cash box. Nyla's breath hitched as she stepped closer, her hands trembling as she lifted the lid. Inside was a stack of bills, brittle with age. A small revolver, rust creeping along the barrel. and a manila folder labeled in faded black marker, Insurance. She opened it slowly. Inside were photographs, grainy shots of men in suits exchanging envelopes, one of them unmistakably Gideon, another of a younger Reverend Amos shaking hands with a cop, and at the bottom, a typed letter stamped with the seal of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office. Nyla read the first line and felt her stomach turn to stone. In exchange for testimony against the Johnson crew, the state agrees to relocate Marjorie Ellis under new identity. Mama didn't just run. She flipped the page, heart hammering as the second paragraph hit like a gunshot. Any breach of agreement will void protections and result in immediate termination of relocation status. Nyla dropped the papers as the sound hit her a car pulling up outside, gravel crunching under heavy tires. She froze. Then the doorknob turned. The doorknob jiggled. Not a knocking attempt to open. Nyla's heart stopped. She swept the papers back into the folder with trembling hands and shoved it into her tote, the metal clinking against the revolver. The knob turned harder this time, rattling in its socket, and a voice smooth, almost amused. Room service. Her blood turned to ice. Slowly, she backed toward the bathroom door, her sneakers silent against the threadbare carpet. The doorknob twisted again, then stilled. A pause, then bang. The door frame shuddered under the impact. The sound echoed like thunder. Another slam followed, harder, cracking the wood. Nyla's breath came in shallow bursts as she slipped into the bathroom, clutching the tote to her chest. The only way out was the tiny frosted window above the sink. Too small for a quick escape, but it was all she had. "Don't make me kick it in, sugar," the voice drawled. "Ain't here to hurt you. Just want to talk." Another crash splinters flying. The door was seconds from giving. Nyla yanked the tote open, fingers fumbling for the revolver. The metal was cold, heavier than she imagined. She'd never fired a gun in her life. One more slam, then silence. Her ears strained against the quiet. The knob stopped rattling. No footsteps. Then a whisper, so close it chilled her spine. "You sound just like your mama when you breathe like that." The voice wasn't at the door anymore. It was at the bathroom window. Nyla jerked her head up. A shadow moved on the glass. Instinct took over. She raised the revolver with both hands, cocking it the way she'd seen in movies. The sound was deafening in the small space. "Back up." Her voice cracked like brittle glass. "I'll shoot." A low chuckle floated through the window. "Relax, baby girl. If I wanted you dead, you'd be gone by now." The shadow shifted, retreating. A car door slammed outside. Tires spat gravel. Silence. Nyla stayed frozen for what felt like hours, the gun shaking in her hands. When she finally lowered it, her legs buckled, and she slid down the wall, breath tearing out of her chest. She didn't move until the night swallowed the sound of the engine. When she crawled back into the main room, the door hung crooked, splinters scattered like bones. She stuffed the cash, the folder, and the gun into her tote and ran into the dark, into the unknown, her pulse pounding the same question over and over. Why would a man hunting her claim to know how her mama breathed? The highway blurred beneath Nyla's tires, the tote on the passenger seat digging into her ribs every time she turned. The cash, the revolver, the manila folder, all of it felt like poison burning a hole in her car. She couldn't go home. She couldn't call Delors Amos, had probably warned her by now. That left one person, Tasha. They'd grown up on the same street, inseparable through school, until life pulled them different ways. Tasha stayed in Memphis, working nights at a hospital E, the kind of friend who always said, "Call me if you need me." Nyla prayed she meant it. The hospital lot was nearly empty when Nyla pulled in, headlights washing over the cracked pavement. She sat for a beat, watching the sliding glass doors like a drowning woman eyeing shore. When Tasha finally appeared, still in her scrubs, Nyla almost broke down. "Girl, what the hell?" Tasha's eyes swept over her. "You look like somebody dragged you through hell backwards." Nyla laughed, but it cracked into a sob. She grabbed Tasha's arm. "I can't explain everything. I just need somewhere to lay low. Tonight, please." Tasha hesitated just a flicker, but then nodded. "Come on, I get off in 20. The drive to Tasha's apartment was a blur of streetlights and half-formed explanations. Nyla told her bits. Mama wasn't who she said. People were looking for her. She left out the gun, the cash, the photos. Some things even Tasha didn't need to know. Inside the small apartment, the air smelled faintly of takeout and lavender candles. Nyla sank into the couch while Tasha locked up, her mind racing through the folder like a Rolodex of ghosts. That letter. Relocation. Mama had been a witness. She wasn't just hiding from Gideon, she'd betrayed him. Which meant if Gideon was alive, so was his grudge. Nyla pulled the folder from her tote and spread the contents on the coffee table. Photos. Clippings. The marriage license. Tasha hovered behind her, eyes widening. "Nyla, what is this?" "My mama, she made a deal," Nyla whispered. "She testified against Gideon Johnson. He was supposed to go down, but..." She held up the blurry photo from the forum thread. "He didn't." Tasha's voice dropped. "And you think he's after you?" "I know he is." The words barely left her mouth before the phone on the coffee table lit up. Unknown number. Nyla stared at it like a snake. Tasha reached for it, but Nyla grabbed her wrist. "Don't." The ringing stopped. A second later, Tasha's phone buzzed. Different number. Same words glowing on the screen. Unknown caller. Her stomach flipped. The call ended. Then a text appeared. 4 words. "You brought company home." The blood drained from Nyla's face. "How?" Tasha's voice shook. "How do they know where?" A sound cut her off. The creak of footsteps in the hall outside. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Nyla lunged for the lights, plunging the room into darkness. Both women froze, listening as the steps stopped right outside the door. A long pause. Then, in a low voice that slid under the door like smoke, "Your mama took something from us. You got 30 seconds to give it back." Nyla's eyes darted to the tote, to the cash, to the gun, and to the folder that might be the only thing keeping her alive. The voice outside the door lingered like smoke, low and steady, chilling Nyla to her core. "Your mama took something from us. You got 30 seconds to give it back." Tasha's eyes were wide, reflecting the sliver of light from the street lamp outside the curtains. Her lips moved soundlessly. "What do we do?" Nyla didn't answer. Her pulse was a drumline in her ears. She grabbed the tote, shoving the folder and the cash inside, her fingers brushing against the revolver's cold metal. 30 seconds. The sound came next a sharp metallic click, the scrape of a lock being teased. "They're picking the door," Nyla hissed, her voice barely a breath. Tasha grabbed her arm. "Back door now." They slipped through the narrow hallway toward the kitchen, their steps muffled on the old carpet. The door shuddered behind them as the deadbolt turned halfway, groaning under the strain. 10 seconds, a voice murmured through the crack. Calm, almost friendly. Nyla's hand shook as she twisted the kitchen lock. The back door swung open, just as the front splintered with a deafening crack. They ran, barefoot across the damp grass, hearts slamming against their ribs. Behind them, the apartment door banged open, boots pounding on tile. "Move!" Nyla shoved Tasha toward the parking lot, fumbling for her keys. Her hands were slick with sweat. A shout split the night. "Nyla!" She spun and froze. A man stood under the flickering lot light, tall, broad, his shadow stretching long across the cracked asphalt. A glint of metal in his hand, a gun. "You look just like her," he said, voice calm as Sunday morning. "Your mama. Same eyes." Tasha grabbed Nyla's arm, yanking her toward the car. The man didn't rush. He didn't have to. His presence was a trap, closing slow and sure. Nyla's keys slipped from her hand, clattering against the pavement. The man's smile widened as he stepped closer, his boots crunching glass from a broken beer bottle. Then headlights. Blinding, sudden, cutting through the dark like salvation. A black SUV barreled into the lot, tires screaming, and skidded between them. The man dove sideways as the driver's door flew open, and another figure jumped out tall, lean, moving fast. "Get in the truck." The newcomer barked, grabbing Nyla's arm and shoving her toward the open door. Nyla stumbled, Tasha scrambling behind her. They tumbled into the back seat as the SUV roared forward, gravel spitting like bullets. Through the rear window, Nyla caught a flash of the man's face twisted in fury, his gun raised, and lost in a storm of headlights as the SUV fishtailed out of the lot. Inside, Nyla clutched the tote to her chest, her breath tearing out in ragged gasps. She looked at the driver, a woman in a dark hoodie, jaw set hard, eyes fixed on the road. Nyla finally choked out a word. Who are you?" The woman didn't look back. "Someone who owes your mama a debt," she said, voice like gravel and smoke. "Now shut up and hold on." The SUV shot into the night, leaving behind splintered wood, broken glass, and the sound of vengeance snapping at their heels. The SUV hurtled down the highway, Memphis lights shrinking in the rearview mirror. Nyla sat pressed against the door, clutching the tote like a lifeline, her breath shallow and jagged. Tasha was beside her, shaking but silent, eyes darting from Nyla to the driver like they were both dreaming the same nightmare. The woman at the wheel didn't speak for miles. She drove with a ruthless calm, one hand gripping the wheel, the other resting on a pistol holstered at her hip. Her profile was sharp, a scar cutting through her left eyebrow, her hair twisted tight under the hood. Finally, Nyla found her voice. "Who are you?" The woman's jaw tightened. "Name's Rena. Your mama ever mention me?" Nyla shook her head. "No, she didn't mention a lot." Rena's laugh was dry, humorless. Figures. Lillian Marjorie. Whatever name she was using, she liked her secrets. Her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "But she saved my life, twice, so when I heard she passed, and when I saw your face on that obituary photo," she paused, "I knew it wouldn't be long before they came sniffing around." "They?" Nyla asked, voice brittle. Rena's knuckles whitened on the wheel. "Gideon's people. Johnson crew never died, baby." It just went quiet, sat real still, like a gator underwater. Waiting. The name landed like a hammer in Nyla's gut. "He's alive?" "Oh, he's alive," Rena said, her tone flat. "And meaner than he was in 87. Your mama put him in a cage for 2 years before the case fell apart. He's been waiting 30 damn years to even the score." Tasha sucked in a breath. "Then why didn't he?" "Kill Marjorie?" Rena finished for her. "'Cause she had something he wanted, something she stole before she ran. That's why they never stopped looking. And now," her gaze cut to Nyla like a blade, "they think you got it." Nyla's fingers dug into the tote, the cash, the folder. "Was that it?" She swallowed hard. "What is it?" Before Nyla could answer, headlights flared in the side, mirror bright, blinding. A car swerved behind them, closing fast. Then another, flanking the opposite lane. Nyla's chest seized. "They found us." Rena slammed her foot down, the SUV roaring like a beast. "Sit tight." The first car clipped their rear bumper, sending the SUV lurching. Nyla slammed into Tasha, pain shooting through her ribs. Tires screeched. Horns blared. "Glove box!" Rena barked. Nyla fumbled it open and froze. Inside lay another gun sleek, black, loaded. "Take it," Rena shouted. Nyla's hands shook so hard the weapon felt foreign, like holding a snake ready to strike. Adrenaline drowned Nyla's fear. She shoved the window down, the wind roaring in like a scream, and aimed at the blur of metal chasing them. The night lit up with fire and noise. The night tore open with gunfire. Sparks danced across the SUV's rear view as Nyla squeezed the trigger, deaf to everything but her own heartbeat slamming in her ears. The car behind them swerved, its tires screeching as a bullet shattered its headlight. "Good girl," Rena gritted, jerking the wheel hard. The SUV fishtailed, throwing Nyla and Tasha against the doors. "Hold on." The second car rammed their side, metal screaming against metal. Rena spun the wheel and slammed the brakes. The SUV swung like a wrecking ball, smashing the attacker into the guardrail with a thunderclap of steel and sparks. The first car kept coming, engine snarling. Nyla aimed again, finger trembling, but before she could fire, a sharp crack split the night Rena's shot, clean and cold. The driver's window exploded, and the car veered off the road, rolling into darkness. Silence swallowed the chaos. The only sound was Nyla's ragged breathing and the low growl of the SUV's engine. "Seatbelts," Rena barked, eyes scanning the rear view for more headlights. "This ain't over yet." But 10 minutes later, the highway gave way to gravel roads, bent to nothing but black woods and a dirt path winding like a secret through the trees. Rena killed the headlights and coasted to a stop near an old shack half swallowed by kudzu. "Out," she ordered. The night smelled of pine and old rain as Nyla and Tasha stumbled from the SUV, legs shaking. Rena popped the back door and grabbed the tote, shoving it into Nyla's arms. "You want answers?" Her voice was steel. "Open it now." Nyla dropped to her knees in the dirt, heart thundering, and emptied the tote. The cash spilled out like dried leaves. The revolver thudded beside it, then the folder. She opened it with trembling fingers, scattering papers like dead secrets. Photos, clippings, that relocation letter. Nothing else. Nyla's throat went dry. This is it. Rena's jaw flexed. No, this ain't what Gideon wants. There's something else, something your mama took before she ran. Nyla shook her head, tears cutting hot tracks down her cheeks. "I don't know what." A voice cut through the dark like a blade. "You know enough." They turned. A silhouette stepped from the trees, tall, broad, wrapped in shadow. Moonlight slid across his face, carving it into something both regal and ruthless. Gray streaked his beard, but his eyes burned with the cold fire of a man who'd waited decades for this moment. Gideon Johnson. Nyla froze. Every cell in her body screamed to run, but her legs were stone. He smiled, slow and wolfish. "You look just like her." Leal always had good taste in trouble. His gaze flicked to the folder, then back to her. "Where is it?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Nyla whispered. Gideon stepped closer, boots crunching gravel. Wrong answer. He raised the gun, the barrel glinting silver in the moonlight. Before he could fire, Rena moved, a flash of steel. A crack like thunder. Gideon staggered back, a bloom of red spreading across his chest. He looked almost surprised, like death had cheated him twice. His knees buckled, and he hit the dirt with a sound that shook the night. Silence. Nyla's breath tore out in sobs she didn't hear. Rena kicked the gun from Gideon's limp hand and crouched beside him. She whispered something Nyla couldn't catch, maybe a prayer, maybe a curse, before closing his eyes with 2 fingers. When she stood, her face was carved from stone. "We ain't safe yet. Men like him. They don't die alone. Somebody'll pick up the pieces." Nyla clutched the tote, staring at Gideon's body, at the blood sinking into the earth like ink. What did Mama take?" Rena's gaze met hers, hard and tired. Whatever it was, it died with him? She jerked her chin toward the SUV. Come on. You got two choices now. Disappear like your mama. Or finish what she started. Nyla stared at the folder in her hands. Photographs of men who'd sold their souls. A letter that turned her life to ash. She thought of her mother's lies, her warnings, her last smile in that coffin. Then she looked at the black woods yawning ahead and whispered the only truth left. I'm not running. Rena's lips curved into something almost like respect. Then buckle up, baby girl. The night swallowed them whole as the SUV roared back to life, leaving Gideon's ghost behind. And in the silence of the trees, the past closed one eye and opened another. What you just heard wasn't the full story. It was the part someone tried to bury, the part that didn't fit the headline, the part where a person, not a suspect, was lost in the process. This case showed us what happens when the system moves too fast, or not at all, when suspicion weighs more than truth, when justice shows up late or never. But here's the thing. If these stories don't leave us asking questions, they'll keep repeating with different names. So if this one meant something to you, don't just move on. Talk about it. Question it. Pass it on. Because silence protects the wrong side of history. And sometimes the only thing standing between truth and erasure is someone who chooses to care. Like, share, comment. Let the next chapter begin with awareness, not regret.